JB here. Good morning. Just want to do a rant on Baidu. Typically, I would write a quick piece and send it out, but figured it'd be easier to rant about it. So that's what I'm going to do. First, I'll talk about the setup and then some of the fundamentals underlying Baidu and where I think it's headed. First, I'll just talk about the setup. So the chart to me is not a be all end all for where stock goes. It's a history lesson, right? The stock has moved to certain levels. There's been buyers, there's been sellers, and the chart kind of shows where the buyers have come in to provide support, where the sellers have come in to provide resistance, and things like that. So, but there are, I think, certain setups that become pretty reliable in regards to moves, and one of those is the pincher. And if you don't know what the pincher is, it's when the ADX, which is the average directional index, they call it, which is pretty much a trend indicator, and the momentum indicators, they nearly touch or what they call pinch. So they nearly come together. Typically, that happens on stocks that have sold off either for a long duration, so a long trend, a strong trend of selling, or a very quick sell off, maybe a 5 to 10 session large sell off to the downside. And then those two indicators pinch. And then once they start to spread, once they start to reverse, it typically provides a large outsized bounce, large outside move. When I'm saying outsized, 15, 20, 25, even more than that percent to the upside. So let me just talk quick about Baidu and some of the stats. Baidu's down over 20.6% since May 6th, and that encompasses their earnings. It's down nearly 24% for the full year, 34% year over year. So you go back to July 4th, 2023, and it's down 34% since then, and then 40% over the past 2 years. And that's concerning the performance in the overall market. So pretty surprising, and especially Baidu's dominance in search, which has remained in China, and some other things I'll talk about in a second. But I think there's catalysts, and if you follow Citron Research, who I've followed many years, and over the years, some plays I've agreed with, some I did not. But he's been bullish on Baidu since the start of the year, and typically he's short names or negative, and especially China. China's a great area for these bears and hedge funds. It seems like they hate China. They always want to come out with some piece about the real estate or pat their back on some kind of China stock that hasn't done well. So to see him come out bullish on Baidu back in February, I think that's a good thing in my opinion. So there's no red flags out there. And then I think there's a lot of catalysts. And if you look, the big catalyst is the most obvious, which is AI, their Ernie app. China has a restriction on companies that can release AI products. They have to be vetted. Baidu is one of the few companies that has been vetted and their product has gotten, or their service has gotten the approval by China. So because of that, it's very hard for other companies to come in. And if you, not to go in a history lesson here for Baidu, and I've been trading Baidu for 10, well, probably longer than that, years back when it was $100 stock, and it had porn and other things on the websites for their search, and China banned them, and its stock had tanked. And then they had issues with hospitals. I think 35% of their revenues at one time were from hospitals. But these are rants for other days. But what they did do is they're one of the few companies that Google came after, and Baidu won. Google was trying to get into China for search, and Baidu squashed them. And at some point, then Google left. And some people might say it was the China government or whatever, but I mean, there's a lot of other companies that are still in China, and Google lost to Baidu. So not here nor there, but just shows I think there's opportunity here for Baidu. So there's some partnerships now that AI apps have to be vetted. Like Chat GPT and all those can't come into China right now. So they have to be vetted. Baidu has that approval. So that's first and foremost. I think that's extremely important. And then now you're starting to see these reports, and there was reports out that Baidu's going to do the maps for Tesla, the robo taxis. There's been partnerships, things like that, and then there's been some deep discussions. There was in the Wall Street Journal, I think last month, in regards to Baidu and Apple, and Apple's trying to get into China as well in regards to AI. So I think that all bodes well. And then you start digging down to the fundamentals of Baidu. And it's a $26 billion company. They do nearly 19 billion in revenue. So trade like 1.5 times revenues for a tech company, right? And a tech company that's growing. So they're still growing. They also have a large cash hoard, 23 billion in cash, 10 billion in debt. And they've used, well, at least they authorized back in 2023, a $5 billion stock buyback program. They've only used less than a quarter of that so far. So just the buyback alone allows for the stock to really bounce. And considering the sell-off it's had, I mean, it's 40% over the last 2 years, 34% just over year, you would think the company would be accelerating that stock buyback right now. So I think that'll help. And then the last part here is the earnings. So their recent earnings, I guess there was maybe a little concern around their core business. So their core business is 75% of their business is pretty much ads, which is their traditional business. But now they're trying to get into the other sides of, especially with AI. And they started charging for their earning, things like that. But their core business still remains strong and is still growing, which is a good thing. So that will help subsidize their scale and growth into AI. So really love the Baidu story. You take a look at the performance here compared to some of the other names, and then the S&P. I mean, look at Baidu's all the way at the bottom here, down, at the low here in July, the year to date was down nearly 24%. I think a lot of it's just a function of what's going on in China. And they mentioned on the earnings call that their slowdown in the economy in China has caused some of these companies to probably scale back a little bit of their ad spend, things like that. So that could be some of it, but I think more it's just a function of the basket of these China stocks getting sold off. And you look at Baba, Baba's only down 6%, and I can probably do a quick rant the same way I'm doing right now on Baidu on Baba, because Baba's just, I mean, there's hundreds of billions of dollars have been bought back in stock, insider buys, things like that, and the stock still flounders. But at some point, these are going to break out, and I think Baidu is set to do that. And I think some of the reason is you take a look at a Pinterest setup. So here's the Pinterest setup. You can see the momentum indicators and the ADX. I just call them momentum indicators. Those are the convergence, divergence indicators. And once those cross, typically it's a bullish crossover here for the momentum, and especially when it gets over zero. So that bodes well. And then the ADX, you can see as it goes up, that's a strong trend. And now the trend is breaking, and these come together. Typically when those two indicators start to separate, the pinch happens and they start to separate, and then you see this large reversal. It just started. You can see it happened here on Tuesday, some continuation on Wednesday, huge move. Well, huge move relative to no underlying news to provide a catalyst. And then you start looking at some of these areas where it could gap fill. And first is the 50-day moving average, 99 bucks. I believe this is 105 and change, and then the 115 handle. I think those will all get hit in the next 30 days or 45 days, if not sooner, as you have the crowds start coming in who are waiting. I mean, there's so many folks out there I think are waiting for some of these China stocks, Baba, Baidu, PDD, all these to really start to reverse. So that's kind of the thought process there. You start looking at also the longer term chart here on Baidu, and this is not the chart, but just so you can get a perspective on the price. But back near the end of 2022, the stock was under 80 bucks. Huge move all the way up, almost a double to 160 in a matter of 2.5 months. Not going to say we're going to have deja vu here, but I could see it going at least to 115 in the next 30, 45 days. And then who knows if there's some forward catalyst here. We have the official Tesla news, official Apple news, more partnerships, earnings, which finally show huge growth on the AI side, and their core business growing. I think there's a lot of levers that are going to be pulled that just, I mean, the company could announce an accelerated stock buyback program, a bigger stock buyback program. They announced that back in 2023, and the stock was in the mid 100s. If they were so confident in their company and their business, you would think they would say, wow, let's buy our stock now before it really starts to take off. So here are some of the targets. I already talked about the first would be the 50-day. So today is July 4th when I'm recording this. I would not be surprised to see it over that 50-day in the next week. So next week sometime. Then you start looking at some of these other names, other areas. There's a gap fill. I think that was after earnings, 108.87, and then 115.39 is the highs from this year. So once those break, it's blue skies over 115. I think the FOMO crowd starts to, play catch up, and to get from the close on July 3rd to 115.39, it's a 28% move. I added some July strikes. I'll probably add some more strikes at the open tomorrow. Citron Research came out with his bull case on Baidu, says, why I can't believe the stock is not over 200 bucks. And this is when the stock was trading 108, 110, somewhere in there, and then up to 115. He still reiterated his bull case. I think there's so many different avenues that you can create a story that says, wow, this stock is severely undervalued at where it is now. And then the chart is kind of the kicker. It's the gravy. That setup, I've seen it so many times. I've been doing this 13, 14 years, especially with the pinchers. I've been doing pinchers longer than that, and they're a very reliable indicator for a large outsized move. So that's my Baidu rant. I hope to see you in the chat room tomorrow. I'll be back on the audio tomorrow. Rock and roll.